I'm playing something almost every week, and sometimes I want to talk about it and give you a vertical slice. So stick with me for some lightning reviews. This week on the chopping block. This and last week I've been playing Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2. This was at the behest of one of my viewers after I played Speed Freaks. That, plus I've been seeing coverage of it from other YouTubers I follow. Anyway, once again I'm pulling out for the second time in a month my I don't know Warhammer lore hat. Or at least I didn't at the start of my playthrough, where I take control of a black shield of the Death Watch named Brother Titus. If you don't know what any of that stuff means, don't worry, neither did I. Taking a moment to heap my first bit of praise, and with the context of not knowing the first bit of jack or shit about the 40k universe, the game made me want to know more, but I'll cover that in further depth in just a bit. You start on a mission to kill invading aliens as a genetically and surgically augmented super soldier. To do this, you are given the employ of a chainsaw sword and an early selection of the chunkiest firearms I've had the pleasure of experiencing in a while. Eventually, you succeed on your immediate mission, get overwhelmed, and then get rescued before the final blow is delivered. Titus wakes up sometime later, seemingly restored to a position of full glory, and from there you follow his tale of mowing down swaths of mindless aliens and corrupted heretics. One thing I heard in the lead-up is that Space Marines 2 is set to revive the sentiments of the golden age of the meathead shooters, reminiscent of games like Gears of War. Unfortunately, I don't have that frame of reference because I never got into Gears of War, but not for any lack of trying. Murky, brown, slow-paced, cover-based shooters were just never my thing. Anyways, getting back to what I was saying about lore, the game intelligently places its dropping of proper nouns and background context enough for the player to be able to follow along and fill in the blanks for themselves, while avoiding the exposition dump pitfall of making the player tune out to excessive jargon. In the meantime, I was able to keep up, but the game's confident visual style and richly detailed environments hooked me even further, betraying a galaxy with lore that, according to some of my more versed acquaintances, runs deeper than the Marianas Trench. And that's one reason so far why I like Space Marines 2. The tale of a protagonist can be involving and interesting in its own right, but if you really want to hook me, have it take place in a fully realized setting. From the minor roles of maintenance and logistics personnel taking place around you, to the allusions to battles or significant events long ago, I want to find out more about the society of blindly allegiant meathead warriors. Speaking of meathead warriors, the combat is possibly one of the most gorgeous examples of simple but satisfying I've played in years. Seamlessly switching from firearms to melee combat, there was rarely a time when I felt overrun. Most basic enemies can be reduced to red putty with a single swing of the mighty chainsaw sword or power blade, and the basic sidearm pistol has the sound and impact that makes you feel like you're firing 50 caliber rounds. Oftentimes the game sends waves of basic enemies at you, Zerg Rush style, and to see a single round railing and reducing whole crowds of Tyranids has this hypnotically pleasing effect that turns to raw testosterone-laced pleasure when you jack up that level with fully automatic weaponry. Space Marine 2 also mechanically incentivizes you to get down and dirty, with glory kills not only letting you deliver a gruesome end to opponents that clearly deserve it, but also helping recharge your shields mid-battle. You can't totally turn your brain off though, and mindlessly swing away with your melee weapon of choice though. Boss fights that occasionally take place require attention to surroundings and resources. You do have a dodge mechanic, and while I used it frequently, I did notice that it offers an absurd degree of protection through the use of invulnerability frames. Actually, while I mentioned the gameplay occasionally tries to keep you from turning your brain off, the visceral and visually stunning battles kind of had an opposite effect when it came to the analysis part of my brain. At times I found myself lost in thought, critically looking at this warrior society, its blind adherence to a particular dogma, and the offhanded remarks against the scientists and intellectuals even within their own ranks. In the slower paced sections of the game, I'd be pondering the fascistic nature and unquestioning loyalty to an almost religious doctrine that the in-game culture portrays, with the belief that those who think differently must be purged. Then the battles would kick in, and my brain would be reset with the thought process being something along the lines of
Burn the heretics and non-believers who dare desecrate the image of our emperor!
oh well, at least we can take solace our society hasn't taken that kind of turn. For the moment, anyways. The game, of course, isn't perfect, though. By the time I'd reached the end of the campaign, the mechanics had just started to wear out their welcome, and when prior bosses are getting rolled out to fill the runtime, I'd argue to developers that you're better off just not doing that in the first place. The sound design also had a frequently recurring issue, where I would constantly be wandering in and out of earshot of conversations taking place around me, and the only way I would be able to get the full context of the conversation was by watching the subtitles.
Sensor is intact.
Can we act?
Apparently not. It's this or nothing.
Finally, the underground lab level with the heavy reliance on rats, and the requirement of using a flamethrower as a weapon was more of a nuisance than I would have liked to have dealt with. Give me a week off to play something else, and I'd wager I'd be willing to jump back in, though. One thing I haven't mentioned is the game has minor splinter campaigns that take place tangential to Captain Titus and his affairs, multiplayer modes, and the campaign can be played entirely in co-op. Plus, the game seems ready-made for a horde mode, which it seems is eventually set to come out according to the season pass. Between Speed Freaks and Space Marines 2, I've been having a pretty good time. Plus, the dipping of my toes into the wider 40k universe and the compulsions to learn more has me constantly thinking, shit, am I becoming a fan of Warhammer 40k? At least as far as the lore and video games are concerned. Keep that overpriced board game shit as far away from me as you can. I have less than zero interest in getting into a heated argument about which of these slightly off-putting ideologies is better, or whose tape measure is more accurate on a nanometer level. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got some books I need to track down. Hey, thanks for sticking around all the way to the end. Remember that I give away Steam keys with my regular weekly uploads, and all you have to do to enter is leave a comment and have contact info on your YouTube profile. But as always, thanks for watching and keep your head on your shoulders.